We have one more report, Hector. You want to
And we do
introduce
have one
Mr.
more
Manning?
report. At this time, I would like to present Mr. Manning, Assistant Principal Student Activities, who will present our semester school culture activity report.
Good evening, board. Tonight I'm here to discuss our 2019 first semester attendance behavior from the Student Affairs Office. In review of this report, I will highlight our attendance tardy and suspension data as well. First, looking at our attendance percentage, we came out slightly behind where we were at last year. This year's percentage was 95.23, slightly below the 95.35 we held last year at this time. We had 3 consecutive years with 95% first semester average, which is above the state average of 94%, which is good, but we still have some work to do on our end in our office for our internal 96% goal, which I think is obtainable. But we're really happy with having 3 95% consecutive years in place for first semester, so that is a win. Total attendance by reason and months are the second category. Average excused absences, meaning students that were absent students that were average each period and considered excused was 45, around 45 students per period. Average cut was around 1.76 students per period, meaning students unverified or unaccounted for, and this number was slightly below our average last year, which is 3.1. So that's actually a really good win. So if you think about it, we have 1,600 and let's say 60 students or so in this building at any time, and we're down to almost 1.5 students that are unverified or cut, and so it means that our officers are doing a really good job of notating when students are out in the health office or student services or in the main office. It's a great job. Typically, when you see higher cut numbers, it might be a student leaving the campus, but more often than not, it's really students that may be outside the classroom that are in the nurse's office or health office or just aren't accounted for. So when you look at like a supervision standpoint, having that percentage is a really big victory, and it means that we're doing a really good job of accounting for all of our students. So hats off to our attendance office and the work that our staff is doing around the building. Early dismissal, we are up a little bit from 1.3 to 1.9, and that would be students that are leaving early for like a doctor's appointment or if they do like a college visit and want to leave early or something like that. That's documented there, and that's pretty typical from where we were at the last couple of years. Tardies, total tardies by month. This is an area that we need to work on. We're up from 7.63 to 12.76 this last semester. Total tardies around the building was around 2,728, which equals almost a half a tardy per student or so for first semester. Looking at the tardies per period, the most significant tardies continue to be our first period. Around 42% of our total that we have from first semester are accounted from first period students arriving late to school. Checking this data and putting these figures to use, our office has constructed a new tardy monitoring policy, which is designed internally to have more face time with our students. Previously to this new policy, we had run-off passes. We'd have those passes delivered to our students and then expect our students to be aware of when they need to serve their consequences. And then we do have a alternative lunch detention room, alternative day assignment room, and things like that for those students. However, we need to have more face time, more check-in, check-outs with our students. So we put that in place, and Ms. Osborne, our assistant dean, is kind of heading that up along with their security team. And they'll check that students to see if they need further assistance or what's going on, or if they have transportation troubles, or anything else that we can assist with. That starts on Mondays for students following the report that we do on Fridays. So students that hit every third action, that's a consequence, and at that point, we would follow up with them. So at 3 and 6 and 9, those are typically lunch detentions. Anything more than that, 12 and so on, you're looking at more alternative day assignments. And then we need to get into like where are we really at with our students, and so that's more of like, we get our team together. We talk about them in small teams with our student services department. We get our counselors involved, our deans involved, and as a team, we talk about what we can do together, and then we bring the parent in as well and have those conversations. Our lunch detention room is going to be.
Question on tardies.
Yes.
Is there any pattern to what day of the week those are on? Does the late start on Thursday have any impact?
It does. This year, actually, I would say my first year was significant. Since then, it's been, it's kind of all over the board. And so I wouldn't say that late start is accountable for all of these. I think it's just first period in general. We do see a slight tick, but not anything over a crazy percentage or anything like that. So I wouldn't say no. I would say no. It isn't more often on Thursdays than usual. So.
Is it a small group of students that are just consistently tardy, or is it
Sure.
a large number of students that are maybe tardy 1, 2?
I left my paper downstairs, but looking from the data that I pulled, I just did grade levels. Our sophomores have 1,000 of those tardies, and then our seniors come in second. Our juniors are a little bit lower than that, and so are our sophomores. So really, looking at our freshmen and seniors and our sophomores, those are where those significant numbers are coming from, but there's no pattern with that as well. It's just that group. So I think, with a face-to-face meeting and talking with our students about our expectations a little bit more. And then also, I think it all comes down to, like, how can we help you? Maybe it's like an organizational thing, laying your clothes out in the morning. Or, because it's 40% is significant. And so if we can cut that 40% down, really attack our students that are late first period, I think that gives us an advantage in cutting these numbers down significantly. When I came here, we were well over 20. And then we were 16. We got down to around 7 point whatever, and then we're up a little bit. So it ebbs and flows a little bit, just depending on the class and student that we have coming in. But it's just kind of tightening some of our procedures in the office, getting some face-to-face time with our students, and utilizing our resources in the office. And I think that will help going forward here. So hopefully second semester you'll see a better percentage out of us. Any questions on attendance? Just before I go on to behavior, I will say that we've done some internal incentives through HERO program. We had teachers that, when students are in class and they do great things, whether it's handing in their cell phone or, even homework assignment related stuff, they can get incentives through HERO, our HERO program. And we've had 48,000 points distributed to our students from our staff first semester. What they do is our students would come down, see me. This semester we're doing it every other Tuesday of each month, and we'll just give back to our students. We'll do T-shirt raffles, we'll do gift cards, candy, things like that, just to give back to our students for doing great things. We'll also have our prom raffle coming up as well. And so our kids are enthusiastic about that, and they hold us accountable to be consistent with it, so that's great. We did a quarterly attendance ice cream challenge per grade level, so I put each grade level's attendance up in our CAF, and then we gave the ice cream for the grade level with the highest attendance, so that was great. And then we just utilized other resources in our office, activity restriction, ability restriction, things like that. When students get to those levels on the tardy scale, we pull some of those restrictions in place, and hopefully we'll incentivize them to get to school on time and get to the classes on time, things like that. We did issue 12 truancy tickets first semester for students that are chronically truant to school, and then we conducted a lot of home visits, over 50 first semester, which is, I think, up around 20 from the previous year. So we're really getting after it, and typically on those visits, it's after we've, for whatever reason, a parent can't get into school. We've called and tried to set up meetings, and then at some point we're like, we just need to get out to the house, and so our deans will go out there with Mr. Neiman, our school resource officer, take a visit, and at that point, if the parent is home, they almost welcome us too. Yeah, please help us, let's get our kids to school. And at one point, a couple of years ago, we've had our dean actually walk the student with the parent's permission to school, and it's those type of, again, relationships that we want to build with our families, and so we're active and we're out there in our community, and it's something that I've been in 4 different high schools. This is the only one I know that we have gone out to actual houses and said, hey, how can we help? And so that's a testament to our deans. So I want to thank them for their work.
Dave, you've done a nice job with the incentives, and as a former dean and assistant principal, this is a battle that you'll continue to fight every year. Some classes are better than others, and I appreciate your creativity with doing the ice cream challenges and posting those things on the wall and trying to find creative ways to reward kids, and your efforts aren't going unnoticed with that.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, I think, of course we would want all the numbers to be 0, right?
Yeah.
But we have crazy teenage brains that we're dealing with, right? And They do things sometimes for reasons that we or their families can't fathom, right? But I think after being here, I think this is, like, do you do this once a year or twice a year?
Twice.
Twice, right? So
Yeah.
this is probably like my 5th time of hearing this. I think what I appreciate most is that, like what Kevin said, you're looking at the data, right? Because you're using the data, so the data drives the decisions, and you keep trying to figure out what's going to work best for that group, that class, that cohort, right? I mean, it doesn't, and we know as educators, right, the same thing doesn't work. You can't keep it the same all the time.
Right.
Because they kind of get tired of that box, trying to fit in that box, right? So, I think you're doing a great job.
Thanks.
And I have to say it on TV because I drive by here, and it's freezing cold out every morning, and so you're in charge of all this, and you're doing this every morning, and so I'm like, I just think that's great,
Yeah, and thank you. I appreciate that. And moving into the behavior side of things, we had a tough semester. We had a tough first semester, probably one of the toughest, one on the behavior side of things since I've been here, since my 5th year. And something I do want to point out is that we have a really great environment here. And there's certain things that are going to get more play than others. And some of these numbers aren't relative of the culture and climate that we have here. And I'm going to share out, there's some repeat students that we're working with to help assist them and get them additional resources. And so we'll go through the suspension numbers for first year, and they're pretty typical of where we're at in the last couple of years, and I showed the historical there. But we did have a couple outliers this year. And as an educator, the last thing you want to do is go to like an expulsion hearing, and talk about other options for students, because we want to handle that in-house. And so we do take this personal, and we're really looking at what we can do as a department to bolster our efforts to help our students and our population here. So I'll talk at the end of this report. I'll talk about what we're doing right now as a team to assist our student body. Looking at some of our numbers here, in alcohol, we had 0 for first semester suspensions related to alcohol. Our drug possession numbers are pretty similar to where we're at last year. We did have 12 offenses, 1 repeat offender. We'll get to those numbers in a second. In addition, fighting, we had 16. So last year, I remember this question, Mr. Smithing said, you guys had a great semester. What's the deal? I said, it was just kind of, good class, good year. And then this year we're up a little bit, which is more similar to where we're at 17, 18. And so in that year, we had set 15. Now we have 16 with 13 total students. We had, a couple of repeat offenders there. And what, it comes down to around 8 fights in our building for a semester. And this happened not only like during school hours, but also after school hours. We had a couple of fights after school hours as well. I'll talk about what we're going to do for that here in a second. Disrupting the learning environment, 5 is the number there for whatever reason. Each semester we have about 5 suspensions relating to disruptions of the learning environment, whether that's extensive language or anything like that, bullying, intimidation of that nature. We had 1 gang suspension, but that was more a student had some graffiti in his notebook and not necessarily identifying himself or anything like that, or colors, or wearing certain identifiers, as more a kid was writing in his notebook. Thefts were up a little bit. Something that we've done to combat that is we put up hooks, and a lot of those thefts come from like our PE areas in our locker rooms, where students drop their bags because they can't fit in their locker, and then they keep their cell phone in there, and then kids pilfer through it. Something that we did here recently within the last week was we installed hooks outside of all of our athletic venue areas, locker rooms, weight rooms, wrestling rooms, and students are now able to put their bag on a hook. Obviously, we tell them take your valuables out of it, but those are all under surveillance. So it's a little more secure than having it wide open in an athletic area. And so we took that idea from LT. They use that, and I think hopefully I know our PE staff is appreciative of it, because now kids aren't taking their bags to class with them. They can now hang their bag up, and it's more of like an attendance participation thing. So that's been a win there too. Weapon possession, and we had 1 that was an incident with a student that had a small folding knife And then we had 12 inappropriate or non-compliance behaviors. And those are when it escalates up to the point where kids are just flat out refusal. And so we had 12, that is down from 18, which is good. So total, we had 50 suspensions for first semester and 42 students. So we had 8 repeats from first semester. Last report, the board asked for me to identify and break down the vape and dab and all those offenses as well. And so looking at that from grade level, vape offenses, so this is like a nicotine vape type device, we had a total of 10, and we had 1 repeat offender in the 9th grade. Total THC related devices are 10. No repeat offenders there, and that's a student that would have a device that heats up the THC oil, and they would be in possession of that during the school day. We had 10 of those. And then we talked about the fights here. We had a couple gross misconduct. Gross misconduct behaviors are those that are insignificant enough where we would have to go to an expulsion hearing, and we had 4 of those, and 2 of those related to a fight. And that one fight, yes, it was relating to the weapon as well, but we put it under the fight category. So 13 total for fight. We had 2 repeat offenders in the 10th grade there. The vapes are considerably down this last semester, which is a big victory. I think all the press and education that's out there now about the harming effects of vape products and what it's doing to the lungs and respiratory illness for our kids, that's been something that we've welcomed. We also did a presentation on vapes during our open house to our parents, and we took everything we had from second semester last year and put it on the table, and our parents came through and were like, whoa, like this is great. Put their hands on what their kids potentially have in their bedroom or at school. So that was great. Also, a side note, we started a website or web link under our website for parents to go to. So our presentation on vapes, our presentation on school safety, I have a video on the school safety forum that we had, as well as like other drop-off, pick-up stuff. It's all under the parent tab now. So I would ask for parents to go there if they're looking for more information about what's going on in our building regarding vapes, safety, things like that. That's a new tab that we established. Other new initiatives this year, the vape fines are still there and as consistent. So a student that is in possession of a vape, it's a $100 fine, and then there would be an alternative day assignment more often than not for those students. For students that are in possession of a THC device, that is a suspension, and that is the student would be then arrested from Riverside for that offense. We completed 15 threat assessments first semester. This is something that we will continue to do. So we have GoGuardian and Bark as our online monitoring systems. If we come into information that students are looking up weapons or there's a fight or anything like that that could be harming to our building, our student services office, our deans will go into a threat assessment with our students and go through a structured, it's called the Virginia model, and we're sending 2 of our psychologists out next week actually to hear the guy who developed it about exactly how are they, and are they a real threat to our building? And if they are, then we need to put some procedures in place with them. If not, then we put them on kind of an agreement, they come back to our building, and then we help support them. So that's something that we've done. We've also, per the state mandate, created a threat assessment team. By February, all schools in Illinois need to have a threat assessment team in place that includes a school resource officer, myself, general education teacher, student service director, counselor, psychologist, social worker. That's in place now, and we're going to hold those meetings starting second semester on a quarterly basis, where we just identify students through like warning data. So it's their attendance, behavior, stuff like that. And then when we put that information, we'll filter it through, and then we'll identify students that we need to bring up to this conversation, and then kind of go from there. And that's something that state identified that schools need. We've already been doing it, but now we actually can have that in place here formally. Our social workers continue to do reflection packets for students that are serving in schools. Our school resource officer has been invaluable with his support after hours, helping me out with certain things. Behavior updates to the staff and students. We've done like a student newsletter about behaviors in the building, and we'll continue to do that. And we've also had a couple of our handbook assemblies with our students as well. So a lot going on. Again, we didn't have the best semester behavior, but I think educating our students, being very transparent about what we're doing and what the behaviors are in our building and how our parents can help their student and how we can help them in a partnership, I think is vital. So hopefully we'll see these numbers go down, and hopefully that was just an anomaly for a semester. So, questions?
So you think it's an anomaly, not a trend, basically?
Exactly. 4 gross misconducts in one semester is extensive, and it's the most I've seen. And again, this is just a blip that isn't a trend at all. It's just something that, is one of those things. So.
So, quick question. Are you and your team trained in any restorative justice techniques? Are those used as part of, I'm assuming that's kind of tied into the reflection packet and some of the other models. Can you talk about that for us?
Sure. Yeah, restorative practices, we're looking more into that. We do have a peer mediation team of students that goes out. And so if we have a verbal altercation and the 2 students agree that they want to kind of talk it out or talk it through, we have a guided conversation from our students peer-to-peer to help with that. I'm a certified prevention intervention trainer, and so our entire security team is too. And basically what that means is our staff knows how to, in our security team, diffuse or de-escalate verbal altercations in a manner which isn't intrusive. And so working with language on that part, I'm a big love and logic guy. And so what I do with our students is try to empower them and their behavior. And so coming up with their own expectations on how to, whether it's in the classroom or out, putting the ball back in their hands. And then behavior agreements. There's a lot of talk about restorative circles and conversation. It's more, I think, just getting kids to talk, And so with the help of the board, we've added social work this year too. And so, they have their own differing meetings that they hold that have different categories. And they group students by those categories that want to be involved. So that's another restorative thing we're doing. And then, like I said, for alternative day assignment, we're really pushing in social work to have reflective practice on okay, I did this to get into the alternative day assignment. How can I, reflect on that to better my behavior going forward? And so those have been really beneficial. And then from that, if the social workers are we need to be more, have more minutes assigned to the student informally, they'll just call them down, with the parent permission. And then if we're really not making traction, then we loop in our special ed department. And then that's when they kind of open up a case study and look more around evaluation on the evaluation side for behavior. So.
So kind of case models a social worker?
Good question. I don't have the data in front of me on that, but we have 2 full-time social workers and a part-time social workers for our 1,600 students, and so they split them down the middle basically with a part-time here a couple days a week. So they're open to any student, but they also have, we have over 10% of our population special ed, so then they carry those minutes that are assigned in the IEP. So those minutes could be anywhere from 25 minutes a week times how many other students they have on that IEP. So it just depends on how the case managers and the parents want to assign minutes. To put it lightly, their days are jammed. And then on top of it, to take an emergency that comes in is difficult. And so, we try to be creative with grouping students up and group at certain points, but that's not special ed, so that we can help them out. I know they also push into our Pride room, which is our room for students with social and emotional needs, and so they're also pushing services for that, and that's at least a couple hours a week. And so they're invaluable for their supports there. I know Beth could probably give you a better readout on that, but just from my special ed experience, the work that they do is valuable, and they're filled up. Their day is filled, and on top of it, now we're asking them to do a lot more threat assessments as well. And so, we're leaning on our psychologists now with that stuff, as well as some of our interns that are taking on a load for that as well. So it's heavy. The emotional needs and social needs for our students is increasing. It's just kind of how, and that's society. That's throughout the country right now. So
going from 2.5 to 3 would be helpful.
Yeah, I mean, Mr. Neiman and myself went to that Secret Service conference where, they looked at all the data from active events in schools, and they said the number one thing you can do is push and be preventative with student support services, social work. That's the only true thing that's going to prevent, an issue in a school, is really getting out in front and talking through and having our support team there. And so more social work, hands down, will be beneficial to the building for sure.
Do we use interns?
Yes.
But they're not counted in the 2 points?
Correct.
So how many interns do we have?
We have 1 psychologist intern, 2 social work interns, I believe.
1 counseling intern, I thought.
So if we add the 2 social work interns, do they add it to a whole, or is their contribution much less as an intern?
It's difficult to say because these are individuals that are right out of college, getting their feet wet, and so we tried really to give them the total experience, but not overwhelm them. So I wouldn't say it counts for a full social worker by any means, but they're just learning how to the paperwork side of it, the conversational, the data, all that stuff, and so I wouldn't say it would equal a whole, but that's hard to determine too. But
Similar to a student teacher.
yes, exactly.
So if you get a good one, but,
And they go through an interview process too, which is great, and we do have some great ones here. We do. This year has been great, but their plate's full too.
it ebbs and
So.
flows.
But it's not similar to a student teacher though, Dr. Stevens, because they would have to have their credentials, wouldn't they, in order to be an intern?
Well, you have to,
Would they have to have their state license and everything before they can enter?
yeah, but usually you have the same stuff as a student teacher. You pass your basic skills test, your content area test. You do your teaching, and then at some point, the teacher steps out of the room. I mean, that's why they're called an intern. So they have to finish so many clinical hours
Okay.
in the school. So I mean, we let them run groups. They'll do some one-on-one, but it's not. We don't give them a caseload and say, here's yours for the whole year.
There's nothing you're depending on that as the intern, as an extra person.
Right.
Well,
Right.
certainly
They
not,
definitely help, no doubt.
sure, but not to complete independently as
Correct.
we would expect our paid social workers to do.
Like a lot of what they do is like a lot of the write-up,
Sure.
a lot of the data end of things for us. Like through our threat assessment, they're taking notes while we're asking questions, and just like reviewing the conversations that we have and making sure that's documented, or meeting with students one-on-one and things like that.
Staff has been notified of all the, Dr. Ayala talked about it at III, all the threat assessment stuff, right? That's new,
That's what it is,
right, the
Virginia model
changes.
and all the
The
stuff we've
Virginia
been
model
doing.
is part of that.
Yes. We presented out to staff. Something that we also are looking at is like the effects of students before they get into our classroom, and so we've had a speaker come out at our last institute, so the staff has been trained on that a little bit, but also
I'm sorry, I
we're getting
misspoke.
into
It's
that.
the restraints and the
Oh.
other things. I'm sorry, that.
And the
that-
state
it was like-
modified a little bit of that language too recently.
right.
And so that's a little bit, that's changed
Right.
since
We
then,
don't
since
have
they
any of that.
put it out.
Oh, right, I know we don't, but I mean,
I
they're,
was supposed to go say, wait a second.
So are you asking like has staff been trained on like trauma?
CPI,
We just did
CPI, is that what it's
Trauma
called?
Institute.
Yeah.
CPI,
Trauma.
right?
Trauma informed.
Trauma informed. We trained our entire staff 3 years ago
Okay.
in CPI.
Yes,
But trauma
staff.
informed is what we did recently at our
Sure.
fall institute. We had a speaker come out and train our staff on that.
Dave, you're putting in tireless hours. We appreciate it. It's not going unnoticed again.
Thank you.
Thank you for all that you're doing and your
Appreciate it.
commitment to the school.
Thanks.
Keep up the good work.
That conclude principal?
Thank you.